Welcome to the Glenn Beck program. It is great to be back in America. I don't know if you have heard, but I have spent the last couple of days in Israel, where I'm working on something there that I think will be very big, because there are very big life-changing things, world-changing events on the horizon. And I will tell you more as we finalize these events, or the parts of it that we're involved with, as we try to be a force for good. We'll give you more in the coming days. When the media elite celebrated the glorious uprisings in Tunisia and Egypt, I was in the back row raising my hand saying, I don't think this is going to be so glorious, especially for America and Israel. Remember? Little Satan, great Satan, kind of the same thing to the people in the Middle East. Not good. Well, how's that working out so far? I can tell you tonight that there is an endgame afoot for man's freedom and the Western way of life. And I believe the end will begin in Israel. And if you don't pay attention, it will all make perfect sense when the world turns the heat on Israel. If you're at home and you're thinking, Glenn, why would you be focusing on the Middle East and Israel? We've got huge problems here at home. I hope in the next few minutes you will begin to understand a little more. Israel is the beginning of what could be the end for man's freedom. And we must pay attention and learn from history. I'll show you tonight. Well, hello, America. President Obama, I'm happy to report, is preparing a new speech that's being called a fresh outreach to the Muslim world that will ask Middle Eastern citizens to reject Islamic militancy and embrace democracy. Saying, and I quote, "Populist movements brewing in the Middle East and North Africa represent the future." End quote. Let me tell you something. He is exactly right, and that should scare the living pants off you, because it's not a bright future. What the people are crying out for in the Middle East and all around the world, including, to some extent, the Tea Party, is freedom. Not democracy, but freedom. And there is a difference. They're totally different things. How's that democracy working out so far in the Middle East? We've seen the Muslim Brotherhood position themselves to take power now in Egypt, for one, which I'm sure is no big deal. They've only said that they will end the peace accord with Israel and start war. But that's crazy talk. I mean, it's not like Egypt and Syria and Jordan and other nations around Israel have ever ganged up on them and started a war. So stop with your fear-mongering. The call now for Israel to be split in two, specifically around Jerusalem, has always been there, but now is a unique time in history. And this is important for every American to understand. For starters, the world is different because instability is higher now than ever before. Capitalism is, what was George Bush saying? It's on the march. Except it's marching the other direction for most of the world. And on top of that, for the first time in history, we have an administration that's not exactly friendly to our allies. Reports now indicate that several Arab governments are pushing Obama to hurry up and outline his plan for the creation of a Palestinian state. Mark my words, this is happening because Benjamin Netanyahu is coming to our country, and Barack Obama has to be first. It will be billed by the world as a way to end the decade-old Israel-Arab conflict. It will not. It will have democracy or freedom march into the sunset. It's important that you understand something about Jerusalem. Jerusalem is already split. It is split into 4 different sections. This is the Dome of the Rock. You've seen this a million times. This is the Temple Mount. This is the Western Wall right here. This is the Southern Wall. And it's split in 4. It's the Armenian section, the Christian section, the Muslim section, and the Jewish quarter. Got it? It's split, and yet it works. I was there this weekend. I walked in all of the sections, and I was free to see everything and how it works. Well, there's a new poll out. Came out in January of this year. It was conducted by the Palestinian Center for Public Opinion. So it was conducted by Palestinians in the Arab neighborhoods of Jerusalem. Most Arabs living in Jerusalem actually prefer living under Israeli sovereignty over Palestinian authority. Why? Because it's stable. Having just been there, I got off a flight this morning at 6:30. I can tell you that in some ways I feel safer in Jerusalem than just about any place else I've ever visited. It's not like you see on television. So if it's relatively stable and it's already divided in four and everybody is protected and it gets along, why would you divide it? Why? You need to divide it to destroy it. Shouldn't we be looking closer at all the other Arab nations around the region that can't seem to grasp the whole living in peace with each other and freedom concept? It seems that Israel, out of everyone else around, is the best place to be, not the one that the world needs to pay attention and fix. That's not me saying that. It's most of the Arabs that live and work with Jews and Christians in Jerusalem. So why the target on the backs of Jerusalem? Well, let's remember, we are the great Satan. Israel is the little Satan. We are one to our enemies. They're not going to wipe one out. Let me ask you this. The great Satan basically means the Antichrist. In the Middle East, they look at the Antichrist not as a person, but an entity or a group. This is the little Satan. This is the little Antichrist. We are the Antichrist. If you were going to just wipe out one, would you do that and stop with one? You need to get both, right? So if you wanted to wipe out freedom, the Western way of life, and America, if you wanted to change the world, what stands in your way? You don't have to answer that. I'm going to let George Soros answer that question. Quote, "The main obstacle to a stable and just world order is the United States," end quote. He also blames Israel for standing in the way of democracy in the Middle East, which, remember, the president just said is the future. Quote, George Soros, "The main stumbling block is Israel. In reality, Israel has much to gain from the spread of democracy in the Middle East, as has the United States. But Israel is unlikely to recognize its own best interest because change is too sudden and carries too many risks," end quote. Yes, when people try to round you up and kill you, you tend to be a little more cautious. So, we won't do it. We stand in the way of a just world, according to George Soros, and they won't understand it. Well, if you're not going to be stopped, what do you do? What stops us from being railroaded? What stops America from crumbling? Well, there's a couple of things. One, money and capitalism, the ability to make more money. Two, the military. Strongest military on earth. Second strongest, I would have to say, I would guess, at least in the Middle East, would be Israel. So, money and capitalism, we have those both in common, and military. And the third would be faith. Let me ask you this. Would you agree that capitalism is being undermined? Would you agree that our military is being undermined by being stretched too thin? And faith, is it being undermined? Is it being weakened or strengthened? Now, if you're going to destroy something and you are part of a society that likes the iconic images, well, then you need some images. You need to make some statements. Why did Al-Qaeda target the World Trade Center? Was it out of happenstance? No. It was targeted because it was a symbol. It was a symbol of our power and our money, capitalism. The other attack on that day happened at the Pentagon. Was that just happenstance? No. That was a symbol of our military. So what's left? You have the power of capitalism and money and the military. The last one is faith. That one is about to be attacked. And I don't mean in a literal sense. A statement is about to be made. A classic symbol of faith. It's happened before. It happened in Spain when the Muslims conquered the Christians there. They tore down a church, a big one, and built a huge mosque. They called it the Cordoba Mosque. They built it directly on top of it. That's the picture. Jerusalem is the center for most of the prominent faiths in the world. It is the key for the Jews and also for Christians. It's where God tested Abraham's faith, and Abraham listened, preparing to sacrifice his own son Isaac. Jesus taught day after day in the temple there and performed miracles there. He was crucified outside of the city, and he rose again from the dead in that city. It's where Muslims also believe Muhammad ascended up to heaven with the angel Gabriel by his side. Now, there's more to Jerusalem. In Judaism, it's also believed to be the place where creation began and where Adam was formed out of the dust in the ground. Where did God gather the dust? God gathered the dust right here on the Temple Mount. In the late 7th century, Muslims slaughtered the Jews during the Muslim conquest of Jerusalem. There's been a lot of killing on all sides. But the Muslims then built the Dome of the Rock. You've seen this picture before. It's the most recognizable structure in Jerusalem, and it currently sits on almost the exact spot of the ancient Jewish temple. The rock that it is referring to, in the Dome of the Rock, is the foundation stone of creation, where God took that stone, made it into dust, and made it into Adam. It is the site the Jews believe is the actual literal site of creation. If you're Jewish, you're not going inside of there. I was supposed to go on top of the Temple Mount this weekend, and then it became a political nightmare, so we didn't go. That should tell you something. If you're Christian, you're not going in there either, which is probably a good thing, because if you did, perhaps you would learn something, maybe too much. Inside the Dome of the Rock, and there are no official legal pictures inside the Dome of the Rock, but inside, there are almost 800 feet of Arabic inscriptions that date back to the late 7th century conquest. And here's what some of what it reads, quoting, "People of the book," that would be people of the Bible, "do not go beyond the bounds in your religion, nor say anything about the truth about God, the Messiah. Jesus, the Son of Mary, was only God's messenger. His word that he committed to Mary, and a spirit proceeding from him. So believe in God and his messengers. Do not say three. Refrain. It is better for you. For God is only one God. Glory be to him that he should have a son." There's also Arabic writing on the exterior, but I don't read Arabic, do you? The writing right here on the outside for all the world to see proclaims a message to Christians. There is one God. There is no God but God alone, without partner. That would be the Trinity. He is God, one God, the everlasting, who has not begotten and has not been begotten. Understand? He has no children. And he certainly doesn't have a partner or a son. So let's see if we have this right. They built the Dome of the Rock smack on top of the holy site, and they did that for a reason, to announce Islam. After they stamped out, they believed, Judaism, and next was Christianity, and declare it to the world. It targeted the Jews because of the holy location, and Christians with the overt transcriptions, but also holy Christian symbols with the intent of warning them. Now, I'm not at war with Islam, and I know I have friends who are Muslim, and they're not at war with me. But rest assured, many in Islam, in the Middle East, and all over the world have been at war with Judaism and Christianity for centuries. Does that mean that Jews and Muslims and Christians can't live in peace side by side? No. No, because there are reasonable people who are not that different. In fact, there's a great test of it. It's called Jerusalem. It is already split in 4 ways. And the protector of all of our sacred sites is Israel. The argument will be made soon, before the year's end, and I believe in September, that the world will have to protect this, and Jerusalem has to go away from Israel. Well, let me show you what happened when the world protected ancient sites under the watchful eye of the UN. Do you remember before September 11th, the Taliban destroyed 2 giant Buddhas carved into the hillside almost 2,000 years ago. Islam in Afghanistan was doing their best to erase any trace of pre-Islamic history. They spent days demolishing them, attacking them with rockets and tank shells. The UN did nothing but watch. You can lie to yourself all you want if it helps you sleep at night, but it will not change the facts. Cordoba was named in Spain to mark the crushing of Christianity in Spain. The Blue Mosque in Istanbul, formerly Constantinople, Constantine, that started Christianity, was changed to make the statement that Christianity in Turkey is over. The Dome of the Rock was a symbol. Judaism is over, and Christians take note. Here in New York, the Cordoba Mosque is not a coincidence. But you would have to ignore history if you want to believe that. But that seems to be the advice of both our president here and the possible new president of Egypt. Quote, "The view that Hamas is a terrorist organization is a view that pertains to a minority of countries, not a majority. Being a terrorist is not a stigma forever. In other words, forget history." Well, gosh, it seems to me that there are a lot of people trying to make our history into us being an oppressor. Are we not supposed to learn from others' history? Even if you don't like Israel, you must stand with them. Why? Because I believe the greatest power we have towards freedom is faith, and a symbol of our faith is about to be lost. Radicals have already attacked the money symbol, the power symbol with the Pentagon, and the next, although not a literal target, is our symbols of faith, Jerusalem. And as for that glorious revolution in Egypt, you know, the one the president wants others to emulate, how's that working out for other members of other faiths? How about the Christians? These are pictures of churches under attack in Egypt. Some have been burned and bombed. There's an account from one Christian church leader, quote, "They performed evening prayer 200 meters from the church, and after they finished, they started shouting, 'We want you to leave.' They were shouting, 'Islamia, Islamia, Islamia, with our souls and blood we sacrifice ourselves for the crescent.'" In Syria, Easter was canceled this year. Christians are now being threatened to either join in the protests or leave. America, the honest among us have to ask a few questions of ourselves and then demand answers from our ruling bodies. Why are the Palestinians forming a government with Hamas and Fatah, and why doesn't it matter? Why are the banks in the Middle East already on the go in the green light to form a new Palestinian state? There was a story, do I have the paper? This is a paper I read on the airplane this morning. Here's a newspaper from Israel. Look at this headline. "Israel must present two-state plan or prepare for violence," J Street warns. J Street, do you remember J Street? That's the one that said they don't take any George Soros money, and then somebody hacked into their computers and found out that they do take George Soros money. And then they said it was only a small amount, and it would have turned out to be like 60% of their budget. Why are they warning? What's that? Why is Turkey currently having a defense fair with Russia? Why, when the world is saying no to nuclear power, it's too dangerous in Japan and Germany and America? Is the world cool with Iran continuing their plans and Russia helping them? Do you remember when I said that there would be a caliphate and one of the elitist tweed jacket wearing, pipe smoking snobs, the elite? The United States has given a forceful speech on immigration while visiting Texas, the state where they asked for help from the federal government. After they were declared a disaster area, they needed some more federal funds so they could help fight the wildfires that have scorched 2.2 million acres in Texas. So you have some concept that's roughly the size of Rhode Island and Delaware combined. But that wasn't worth the president's even returning a phone call to Texas. And in completely unrelated news, last month, President Obama sent specially equipped cargo planes to help battle wildfires. Not in Texas, but in northern Mexico. The Mexican government picked up the phone, and President Obama took that phone call. So let's see. Let's not help Texas, but let's help Mexico. Well, let's see how much he cares about stopping illegal immigration. Mexican authorities, by the way, announced today that they have unearthed 8 more bodies from the mass graves, bringing the total to 188. Also this week, in a separate incident, suspected drug hitmen dumped 6 headless bodies outside of a school in northern Mexico. The middle-aged school kids were about to put on a Mother's Day show when the headless bodies were dumped. Mr. President, we have a problem on our southern border. And if you would like to have a dialogue, here is what we would like. 1. Mr. President, secure our border. I'm sorry, I feel redundant. I said this during the Bush administration, too. Secure our border. Support our border agents. Enforce U.S. law. And 4, make legal immigration easier for those who want to come in and be an American. The fence the president claimed was, quoting, basically complete in his speech, is not even mostly complete. It's actually 5% complete. Mr. President, do you need a refresher on math? Even the law mandating the fence be built only called for 670 miles of fencing in the first place, along a 2,000-mile border. The border, sir, is not secure. It is porous. Don't just post the border agents on the border, please. Support them. Rather than sending $1.4 billion to Mexico and Central America, as Bush did, use it on our side of the border and help our agents. 37,000 people have been murdered across the border, just across the border, in just the last couple of years. Will the violence reasonably stay on that side of the border forever? The answer is no. What do you say? We allow our National Guard to put bullets in their gun and use them if necessary. You know, I want to be very careful. Use the guns that are loaded if necessary. Think of it as not a kill order, but a capture order might be good. By enforcing our law, we stop enabling illegal alien activity, and that includes cracking down on U.S. businesses that refuse to comply. And making the illegal immigration system easier, I mean, I'm sorry to hurt Cass Sunstein's job and make less red tape, but it is hateful, isn't it, to encourage legal immigration while discouraging illegal immigration? Mr. President, it sounds almost like Republicans want to stock alligators in moats, which is, by the way, what he said in his speech. Legal immigration enhances our nation. Illegal immigration tears it apart. But it seems to me that there are those people in our country that want to tear us apart. You'll have to make your own best guess at why, but I will show you an example next. I had a chance to compose a special message when I was in Jerusalem this weekend. I composed it while I was in the Garden Tomb at the end of my trip. It's one of the most sacred sites in Jerusalem. It is there now, available at glennbeck.com. I invite you to check it out and join us for a journey over the next couple of months that will take you to places that you will only imagine. I invite you to be a part of history firsthand. Go to glennbeck.com now and get more information. You are going to meet somebody extraordinarily fascinating and I believe very, very brave. There is a situation in Tucson, Arizona that has a community divided. And I told you this story a couple of weeks ago when a school board meeting got out of hand before it even got underway. The state's education officials are currently reviewing the Tucson Unified School District's Mexican American Studies curriculum to determine whether this is even legal. Trust me, what little I have read, it is not legal. If it is, we're in an upside-down world. The state has an absurd law that doesn't allow schools to, quote, promote the overthrow of the United States government or promote resentment towards a race or class of people. Can you imagine? In America, we have the nerve to discourage treason in our classrooms. So, the school board said it would consider making the class an elective, which to me is nuts, rather than making it a core requirement. Your tax dollars in Arizona are going to pay for this. So how did the students react to the extreme injustice of having to opt into this wonderful class? Watch. Here they are. Here they are, chaining themselves to the school board members' desks and refusing to leave. See that kid right there? That kid is frightening. So last week there was another meeting, a second attempt to discuss the issue, and this one was no better than that one. 7 people were arrested in this one. Here it is. And board members had to be escorted out of the room, and a riot team had to come in and restore order. Now I want to introduce you to somebody, and I want to introduce you to somebody who is brave, I think, to even come on the show after everything that is said about me, to come on my program. She's a liberal Democrat that believes in social justice. I don't. But she said she was surprised at what she found out about this curriculum. Loretta Honeycutt is the co-founder of a group called TU4SD, which was asked by the school board to review this curriculum. Welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
You bet. We disagree on stuff, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. You don't need to say it like that. All right, so we disagree on things. And you are a liberal Democrat.
I am.
You're not some shill for the GOP or anything else.
No.
And you got in, and what have you found?
We were asked to, I had offered support for ethnic studies originally, and had sent a letter of support for the program to the school, to a school board member who was a friend of mine.
Okay.
And I said, please defend this program. He wrote me back and he said, it's not what you think it is. Will you please help us look into some of the charges and claims made by various people? So we offered our expertise. We do have some expertise in school reform, and my particular expertise is in equal access issues. So we came in with a devotion to public education.
Your mother helped start one of the first teachers' unions, right?
Yes, she did.
So you and I couldn't be on farther ends of the spectrum.
Correct.
Correct. Got
but
it.
One thing we have learned over this time, our group is growing, and it's both Democrats and Republicans who have...
Because this is not political. This is against America, and really against, it's pitting people against people, is it not?
And I think it's being used as a distraction. You know, pay attention to your parties, not to what's really happening. So we're looking at all of these false arguments, and we're not looking at the...
Listen, America, would you just listen to what she just said? Say it again. Listen to what she just said. The news of the day is...
well, that we're being distracted by politics and not by principles and real issues and our core values.
Come here. Come here. I love you. I love you. Thank you. Exactly right. Okay. So, I saw this picture. Do we have the picture of Ward Churchill involved in this? We have a, there he is. I don't know if you can spot him there. He's over there. He is. There's Ward Churchill. This is the guy that said everybody in 9/11 was the Leichmans. This is not some little Democrat. This is extreme anti-Americanism being taught.
Absolutely.
Give me a clue on just a couple of things that are being taught in this.
I think the key component is a resentment towards our country. And, you know, public education was founded on the principle that we're developing great citizens who look to improve our country, certainly not overthrow it. And we're seeing that in the curriculum.
Who's behind this?
It's a group of radical ideologues who are absolutely committed to creating little foot soldiers. And this is their...
Do you know who specific? How did this program, did it start this way? Did it evolve? Do you know?
It evolved over time, and I think it originally started as a jobs program for a bunch of ideologues coming out of the university that couldn't otherwise be employed.
This is actually the University of Arizona is involved in this, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
But these are people that the University of Arizona, they are still employed by the University of Arizona?
No, they're employed now by the district. So they're educated at the University of Arizona, and then they take jobs over at the district. And it's a little job factory. It's almost become a cottage industry, and it's all based on this critical race theory. And it's
what is critical race?
Critical race theory is the theory that everything that happens to you, every experience you have, every thought you have, all the views that you form are solely based on your race. Everything that happens to you is only a function of your race.
Now, gee, that sounds familiar. Yeah, I don't think I need to say any more, but you as a liberal Democrat have seen race played out, but I'm guessing, seeing that you're white, and you're now coming out and saying this is bad, I'm guessing now that you are only thinking of race now to many.
What's unfortunate about this whole situation is it has absolutely nothing to do with race. If you were to look at the 4 different departments at this school district, all of the other ethnic studies programs, Pan-Asian, African American, Native American, those programs are perfectly in compliance with the laws. They elevate children. They celebrate the accomplishments of their ancestors. They recognize our foremothers and forefathers of color's wonderful contributions. This is distinct in its emphasis.
Okay. When we come back in just a second, Lori's going to explain to you, this isn't just happening in Arizona. And this is why I've said for a while that we Americans have got to wake up. They've got to wake up. It has happened in dribs and drabs and slowly, and you have no concept of how bad things have gotten. And I think Tucson is the tip of the iceberg. Remember, it is also now in Tucson that we learned this last weekend that they're being described as liberal Democrats. I'm sure you're not one that wants to secede from the state. It was supposed to be those crazy Tea Partiers that wanted to do that. But somebody in this same area, it seems to me, Tucson is being ripped apart from the inside. Where will it end? Well, I guess that's up to all of us on how we react to it. But I want to show you a little bit more on what's in this curriculum, what you should look for in your school districts, and how you can get involved. Coming up. I have to tell you, we could spend some time talking more about this this Tucson curriculum. I invite you instead to go to my website at glennbeck.com and look at we have all of the curriculum there. Your eyes will melt. Instead, I want to spend a little more time with an amazing woman who, America, this is the kind of person I have been looking for a long time. Loretta Honeycutt is the co-founder of TU4SD, nonprofit partisan group, nonpartisan group of concerned citizens in Tucson. She is a liberal Democrat that believes in social justice. Her mother started the teachers union in Arizona. Hello, we don't agree on much. But we were just talking in the break. And please, this situation in Tucson is so ugly, and it is communist, anti-American, and it's going right to our children, and it's ripping Tucson apart, right?
Correct.
How do you get, if I say these things, people will not, they'll not report it, nobody will report it, nobody will care, because all the Democrats will say, oh, it's Glenn Beck. Here you are, somebody who strongly disagrees with me. How do you get people to listen to you? How do you get Democrats to say, whoa, 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 it's been hijacked, it's way out of control?
I think we have to set an example for each other and decide that our principles are far more important than our politics. And at our core, I think we're very similar. we have the shared value. We all have the same American values of, appreciation for diversity and acceptance and a hope that we can always be better and work harder and get where we want to be, the more equitable society. So as long as we can say, you know what, I can't care what the pressures of my party are, I can't care that I will no longer be invited to their events or popular, you have to put that aside, because at some point we have to just admit that we're on the precipice, essentially. And if we don't put all of that aside and recognize what's really, really important, we're going to lose what we really value. And
Did you know that you would be called a racist and that you would become under attack like you are?
We did know that. We knew that we were walking into a very tricky situation. We had to have the confidence in ourselves that we had pure hearts and goals, and that we were keenly aware of the civil rights issues involved that could come up. We knew that we were going to be called horrible names, but at some point you have to trust yourself. You have to trust that you can endure the epithets and the charges, and you know what's at your core, and you have to put kids above everything.
Okay, I want to thank you. You are what the 9/12 Project was about: values and principles over everything else. I want to show you how you can get involved next. I think we love each other. Loretta Honeycutt is TU4SD. That's part of a nonpartisan group made up of concerned citizens in Tucson. She is a liberal Democrat that believes in social justice, and we're talking about a curriculum that is, would you say it's treasonous or teaching treason?
Absolutely.
Okay. And it's awful, and it's tearing Tucson in half. And it's not just in Tucson. No,
it's making its way across the country. And
so what do people look for? If I'm a parent at home and I think, well, that's just in Tucson, what do I do?
I think that you look for change a curriculum that reflects, that talks about, they couch it in such lovely terms, social justice and transformation. So there are certain buzzwords that people should be aware of, and it doesn't mean what we think it means. It doesn't mean what we want it to mean. And what we want it to mean is an equitable country that recognizes that we do have social and political forces that are unfair.
We've made mistakes, and we all want to be better. We all want to be better.
And we continue to make mistakes, but they're not, we can cure those mistakes, we can change our ways.
That doesn't mean that, like in this one, it teaches that Thanksgiving should be a day of atonement because we're a murderous group of people.
Exactly.
Okay.
So, and everything that's good is twisted to bad, which is...
How do people connect with you?
They can come to our website, tu4sd.com. We would love to see people get involved in their schools around the country. People have kind of walked away from the public schools. We need them to get re-engaged again and start looking at their curriculums and do the schools reflect their community's values?
Okay, America. A liberal Democrat that believes in social justice. A brave, brave woman. Let me tell you something. Courage and compassion. Those two things will fix us. Courage and compassion. Please get involved. Don't dismiss this. Our country is under attack from the inside. Back in a minute. If you have kids, college-age kids, any kids really, you have to watch this program on Friday. You'll be shocked to find out what their professors are saying to them. From New York, good night, America. Has always been there, but now is a unique time in history. And this is important for every American to understand. For starters, the world is different because instability is higher now than ever before. Capitalism is, what was George Bush saying? It's on the march, except it's marching the other direction for most of the world. And on top of that, for the first time in history, we have an administration that's not exactly friendly to our allies. Reports now indicate that several Arab governments are pushing Obama to hurry up and outline his plan for the creation of a Palestinian state. Mark my words, this is happening because Benjamin Netanyahu is coming to our country. And people are crying out for in the Middle East and all around the world, including to some extent the Tea Party, is freedom. Not democracy, but freedom. And there is a difference. They're totally different things. How's that democracy working out so far in the Middle East? We've seen the Muslim Brotherhood position themselves to take power now in Egypt, for one, which I'm sure is no big deal. They've only said that they will end the peace accord with Israel and start war. But that's crazy talk. I mean, it's not like Egypt and Syria and Jordan and other nations around Israel have ever ganged up on them and started a war. So stop with your fear-mongering. The call now for Israel to be split in two, specifically around Jerusalem, in the Middle East. Not good. Well, how's that working out so far? I can tell you tonight that there is an endgame afoot for man's freedom and the Western way of life. And I believe the end will begin in Israel. And if you don't pay attention, it will all make perfect sense when the world turns the heat on Israel. If you're at home and you're thinking, Glenn, why would you be focusing on the Middle East and Israel? We've got huge problems here at home. I hope in the next few minutes you will begin to understand a little more. Israel is the beginning of what could be the end for man's freedom. And we must pay attention and learn from history. I'll show you tonight. Well, hello, America. President Obama, I'm happy to report, is preparing a new speech that's being called a fresh outreach to the Muslim world that will ask Middle Eastern citizens to reject Islamic militancy and embrace democracy. Saying, and I quote, "Populist movements brewing in the Middle East and North Africa represent the future." End quote. Let me tell you something. He is exactly right, and that should scare the living pants off you, because it's not a bright future. Welcome to the Glenn Beck program. It is great to be back in America. I don't know if you have heard, but I have spent the last couple of days in Israel, where I'm working on something there that I think will be very big, because there are very big life-changing things, world-changing events on the horizon. And I will tell you more as we finalize these events, or the parts of it that we're involved with, as we try to be a force for good. We'll give you more in the coming days. When the media elite celebrated the glorious uprisings in Tunisia and Egypt, I was in the back row raising my hand saying, I don't think this is going to be so glorious, especially for America and Israel. Remember? Little Satan, great Satan, kind of the same thing to the people in